My name is Jen and I finally delved into the world of the shadow hunters. It has been a long time on my TBR, whether I had them physically or if it was just like a mental loose TBR. I knew one day I wanted to dive into the world of the mortal instruments stroke the shadow hunters, and of course the place to start, for me at least, was the City of Bones. This is the first in Cassandra Clare's series of mortal instruments about the shadow hunters, who are basically like demon slayers and like keepers of the peace, although you definitely find out quite soon that there is some elitist tendencies within that demographic, and it's not always peacekeeping that they do. So what this is about: love, blood, betrayal, demon. It is a YA fantasy romance, I guess you could say, where we follow Clary, who is irresistibly drawn towards a group of demon hunters. She encounters quite quickly the dark side of New York City and the dangers of forbidden love after she starts seeing vampires in Brooklyn and werewolves in Manhattan. This is a whirlwind of a first book. I fully loved being in this world and getting to meet all the different characters. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Just before I get onto the main scope of the review, I'd like to point out that I did some blended reading with this. I physically read it and I listened to the audiobook as well, which definitely helped me get through some of the more tedious parts at the beginning of the book. But in saying that, I was shocked at how easy it was to suspend my disbelief. I thought I would struggle, being a mature reader, reading like a classic YA at my big age, do you know what I mean? Like sometimes some of the tropes just hit a little too cringy for my preferences of now, but no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm happy that I was able to kind of just become really invested in the characters, the lives, the world of the demon hunters and the magical creatures that we got to meet. Honestly, beforehand, I mean, I would have known what it was about when I first set my sights on this all those years ago, but in recent years I didn't really know what the shadow hunters was about. I just knew the name Clary, I knew the name Jace, and I knew it was some sort of fantasy, but I didn't know to the extent of werewolves and vampires and fairies, oh my. So that was such a nice surprise to me. I kind of must have known subconsciously that it would be something that I'd gravitate towards, because that's the sort of thing I look out for, especially in a YA, especially back when I was 14, 16, that age group. So just from that perspective, I knew it was something that I would kind of gravitate towards. But yeah, reading it now, not really knowing beforehand, super a lot of detailing. When I read the back, just before I went into the story, I was like, oh, vampires, oh, werewolves, and I was super excited. So that was a lovely surprise for me. As I mentioned, the first couple of chapters definitely would have dragged had I not had the audiobook to guide me through it. I think those initial couple of setting up the characters, setting up the world, it did feel very juvenile to me. It did feel like, an old school debut fantasy story, and the characters did read pretty young. But as I say, the audiobook really carried me through those first couple of chapters and helped me to establish bonds and further attachments to the characters, so that when I did end up picking up the physical book, I was instantly transported into the world. It also helped that pretty soon, maybe I'd say about a third of the way through, I made a connection that it felt like Percy Jackson vibes to me, and as soon as that became apparent to me, my enjoyment instantly increased that much more, just because I love Percy Jackson. I'm so excited for the TV series coming out, I think in December of this year. So yeah, once I kind of had that mindset as well, even more so, I was just enjoying the ride. I've heard a lot of people, from what I can remember, berate Clary, and maybe she gets more annoying as the series goes on, but I actually thought she was quite a pretty enjoyable character to read from. She felt, definitely immature at times, but it was believable for her age group, especially recalling how I acted myself as a 15-year-old. She did pretty well in the grand scheme of things, I would say, considering all the shit that she was going through. One thing I couldn't ignore about Clary though was how she just seemed to be such an awful friend to Simon. To me, Simon is the star of the show. I absolutely adore him. I feel like he deserves so much better, especially considering the friendship or lack thereof that he has with Clary. Clearly being, you know, besotted by her. You know, he's got feelings for her, and she clearly doesn't reciprocate them in the same intensity that he does. And I feel like as soon as she goes into this world of the Shadowhunters, he's there for the ride, which is really cool, and I'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute. But I feel like she just easily drops him when she finds something cool and new to, I don't know, excite her life, or to, you know, potentially help her in the situations that she's in. She kind of just forgets he exists, and there's multiple lines in this where she's like, oh, I sort of just forgot about Simon until I looked at him, or until he like breathed. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, that is a really shitty thing to say as a friend. Like, you guys have been friends since you were children, like over a decade, and that's how you treat him. Like, I don't know how, to be honest. Simon's love for her carried that friendship, because I would have been dipping out from the get-go. Like, if you're not giving me that same level of love and appreciation, even if it's not romantic, if it's just platonic and we've like laid out the rules and I'm like, okay, I'm in love with you, but you don't feel that way, then you can make a decision, right, okay, I can get over this, I still want you in my life as a friend, or do you know what, I can't get past this, my love for you is too strong and I think it will hurt me more to be around you. But no, he kind of just, he lets, in a way, lets her treat her that way, but also she's not self-aware enough to be like, shit, I'm actually a crap friend, and it upsets me. Sorry about that rant. I didn't like that. He was at her beck and call, and there was no conclusion, there's no conversation to settle what really happened between them, and they were fine, apparently. But I feel like there was so much unspoken things by the end of this novel that really needed to be resolved to get to the point where we were in the second novel, which I've since read. In saying that, I did love Simon. I thought he was funny, I thought he was a sweetheart, but he wasn't like overkill as a typical comic relief. It was clear that that's kind of what his character was, being like the normie, the human of the group, but there was so much more to him, and yes, a lot of his personality revolved around being, you know, Clary's little bitch in some regard, and kind of needing to get a backbone. I still thought he was a breath of fresh air and just such a charming and lovable character. It was definitely fun to see his perspective again as the only human in this like group, kind of thrown into this world, and just to see his experience of it from a different set of eyes. You know, despite her ignoring him, he was such a good person to humble and keep Clary grounded. But I do think he lost himself in his love for her. I also really appreciated that we had a cast of adult characters too. I think this also took away some of the minor annoyances I would have had if we were just following a group of kind of young to mid-teens. Luke was probably my favourite out of the adult characters. However, when he said something like, I should have tabbed it. I don't think this is the bit that I tabbed. No, that's not it. He said something like, don't call me uncle, I'm really not old enough to be your uncle, and I'm not really your uncle, to be honest. How many times did I say uncle? Something like that. It just rang really super creepy to me at the time, and I read that, I was like, ew, that sounds like some creepy noncy behaviour. I kind of get what he was saying, like, especially now coming out the other side of the book, and how his relationship dynamic was with Clary's mum, and how he kind of viewed Clary. I kind of get what he was saying, but in that moment, just the wording of what he was trying to get across wasn't the best, and it just sounded kind of creepy to me. I think the last character I'll talk about before I wrap things up is Jace. He was just so hot and cold, and I felt like he was that charming kind of typical YA heartthrob, swoon-worthy main love interest character, but he'd switch and be really spiteful, and I just couldn't vibe with him, because you never knew what you was gonna get, because even in the middle of a scene he'd just switch like that, and I'd be like, right, okay, where do I stand with you? And of course the big issue of all, we'll get to this little spoiler section in a minute. Anyway, overall I had so much fun reading this. I'm hopeful that the main series is just as enjoyable, which so far it has been. At the point of filming this, I've read 3 of the books. I've read City of Bones, City of Ashes, Oh, I do apologise, I'm about to start City of Glass, so I've yet to actually read that at this moment in time. But yeah, I've really been enjoying them. It's made for a fun and easy, quick entertainment that really had me invested more so than I expected, in particular character arc, as well as the overarching direction of the plot. And I'm super eager to pick up the rest of the books in the series. So, if you want to stop here and you, like me, have been living under a rock and have not read this series, then dip out now. I'm going to quickly talk about a spoiler and then completely close this video here. Clary and Jace are siblings. What the fuck? Oh my god. I was blindsided by that incestuous situation, and the fact that the main gripe is forbidden love. I'm like, dude, are they continuously trying to pursue this? From reading the second book, I'm like, please, 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 can we get a turnaround and be like, okay, it's not actually truth. But even still, as soon as you've been told there's a potential and a highly likely chance that you are related, and not only related, but you are full blood brother and sister, same mum, same dad, even though it'd be weird in any other case, but just to, you know, drive home how closely related they are, that would be an instant turn off. You would be like, holy shit, I have no romantic feelings for you whatsoever. Or even if you did, you'd be like, I ain't pursuing this, this is weird, this is all sorts of wrong, right? But it's like, so even if they did come back and say, okay, yeah, you're not actually related, it was some way to manipulate you guys into doing, like, if Valentine came along and was like, some way to manipulate you guys, I would still be feeling some type of way, and I probably wouldn't want to be around that person much, because that's awkward. Like, that, just the way they've flirted and kissed and the, like, sexual tension between them, it's just uncomfortable and weird, personally. Anyway, got that out of my system. That is it. Now, finally, for the review of The City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, the first book in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, or the Mortal Instruments, book 1. Let me know what you guys thought about this, if you've had a reread in recent years, perhaps as an adult now, if you read it originally as a teen when these were releasing, and maybe if you've got differing views now in retrospect. I would love to hear it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I shall catch you in another video soon. Bye!